Have you ever wondered why you sometimes make choices that seem completely irrational? Why you might pay $50 for a concert ticket but refuse to buy a $500 jacket with the same design? Or why you might drive across town to save $10 on a $50 item but wouldn't dream of doing the same for a $1,000 item? Welcome to the fascinating world of cognitive biases, and specifically, one that affects every single financial decision you make: the anchoring effect. The anchoring effect is a cognitive bias where an individual relies too heavily on an initial piece of information, that anchor, when making decisions. This anchor might be completely arbitrary, yet it can dramatically skew our judgment. The concept was first identified by psychologists Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman in 1974 during their groundbreaking research on judgment under uncertainty. Here's how they demonstrated it in their famous Wheel of Fortune study. Tversky and Kahneman spun a wheel of fortune that landed on either 10 or 65. They then asked participants if the percentage of African nations in the United Nations was higher or lower than that number, and what their actual estimate was. The results were stunning. Those who got 10 as their anchor estimated the average percentage to be 25%, while those who got 65 as their anchor estimated it to be 45%. The arbitrary number completely swayed their judgments, even though it had absolutely no logical connection to the question at hand. Fast forward to 2006, when researchers at the University of Chicago took this concept into the real world of retail pricing. They set up a clothing store where some customers saw a dress originally priced at $59, now marked down to $39, while others saw only the $39 price tag. The group that saw the original price was willing to pay significantly more, about 30% more on average, for identical items. This demonstrates how retailers use original prices as anchors to make their discounts seem more valuable than they actually are. The anchoring effect isn't just about shopping, it influences everything from salary negotiations to courtroom judgments. In 2011, a study published in the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology found that mock jurors who heard a high initial damage anchor awarded, on average, 3 times more in compensation than those who heard a low anchor, even when the evidence was identical. One of the most fascinating applications of anchoring is in salary negotiations. Research by economist George Lowenstein and colleagues in 1993 showed that the first number mentioned in a salary negotiation sets the anchor for the entire discussion. This is why negotiation experts always advise that whoever mentions a number first loses. They've just handed the other party a powerful anchor to work with. But here's where it gets really interesting: we're not just influenced by external anchors, we create our own internal anchors all the time. In 2003, psychologist Thomas Gilovich conducted a study where participants were asked to estimate the number of physicians in the United States. Before guessing, some were asked if the number was higher or lower than 100, while others were asked about a number higher or lower than 10,000. The estimates differed dramatically based on these completely arbitrary anchors, even though participants knew the anchors were random. This has profound implications for how we set goals and expectations. When you're trying to make a change in your life, whether it's losing weight, saving money, or learning a new skill, the initial goals you set become powerful anchors. Research by psychologist Edwin Locke in 1968 found that specific and challenging goals lead to higher performance than vague or easy goals, but those goals become the anchors against which all progress is measured. So how can you protect yourself from the anchoring effect? The first step is awareness. Recognize that your first impression or piece of information might be skewing your judgment. When making important decisions, try to gather multiple pieces of information before forming an opinion. In negotiations, research the reasonable range before entering the conversation so you're not swayed by the other party's anchor. Psychologist Dan Ariely, in his 2008 book Predictably Irrational, suggests that we should actively question our anchors. When you find yourself using a piece of information as a reference point, ask yourself, would I still make this decision if this anchor didn't exist? In 2017, researchers at the University of Exeter found that simply being aware of the anchoring bias reduced its effect by about 40%. That means just knowing about this bias can make you less susceptible to it. The next time you're making a decision, whether it's buying something, negotiating a salary, or even forming an opinion, ask yourself, what's my anchor here? And is it really relevant to the decision I'm making? By understanding this powerful cognitive bias, you can make more rational choices and avoid being manipulated by arbitrary numbers. So here's my question for you: what arbitrary anchor from your past might be influencing your decisions today, and how could changing that reference point completely transform your future choices?